duty is to write a code about how they will comply with their obligations. If you want to say the act itself is rubbish, then the politicians are the people to talk to about that.
Okay. Just going back to some of your slides, because I'm thinking of Twitter. Now we all use Twitter, I'm sure most of us do. And Twitter, and you're encouraged to retweet. It's a function of Twitter to retweet. And going back to what is copyright, we've got here written or spoken word, and then you've gone on to some of the myths. So I'm thinking, people write something online, I look at it and I then just retweet it.
Yes.
Am I basically is that illegal now? Because I've taken something that someone's written, it's theirs, and I'm just retweeting it because it's a social media tool, and it's actually it's the functionality's been built in, and I'm retweeting. So when I'm retweeting, is that now a copyright infringement?
Probably not is the answer.
Okay.
The right to use something that is protected by copyright, if you give a person the right to use it, you give technically what's called a license. The license doesn't need to be a written document, it sometimes is. But if I wrote something down, like I wrote in this presentation, and I share it with you guys, this work is my copyright, even though I stole bits of it from elsewhere, I have to confess that. But the actual work itself is a creative work, I have copyright in that. By sharing it with you, I've given you an implied license to use that and to share it with other people. And if someone sends a tweet, they obviously expect that to be passed on. So they haven't given up their copyright. This is law that predates the Digital Economy Act. They haven't given up their copyright, but they've given other people a license to use it. Sometimes the extent of that license is a matter of debate. And as I said earlier, if you go to some websites, go to the FT website, go to the Sony Music website, other areas where you can download things, and read that license agreement, the terms of use that is published. Or, if you're feeling like a spot of insomnia, I suggest you read the FT website license agreement. Boy, is it complicated. The problem, and you've hit the nail on the head there, the problem is some people will say, am I allowed to do this or not? Do I have to read this long copyright notice now? Do I have to understand it? Do I have to go talk to John Stobart or some other lawyer about this? So people will increasingly, many people argue, become afraid of doing things that they thought previously were fine. I mean, we all go into newspapers and magazines and sites and cut stuff, clip it and send it to somebody else. It happens all of the time. The fact it's on the internet makes it easy to do that. And as I said when I began the talk, that's the problem that the creative industries see, because previously, before the advent of the internet, if someone had published a book, the printed word, and supposing this was a novel that I'd written, and somebody wanted to copy it, and if they did so, they would be breaching my copyright in the book. But physically, they had to get the thing and they had to copy it physically and redistribute it. And there was effort and time involved, and there was expense involved. The internet changed all of that. You can actually copy copyrighted works with a click of the mouse. And again, the law is struggling to catch up. The law is always struggling to catch up with the changes that have been effected by the internet in many ways, and this is one such area. But the argument is, those who support free speech and free use of the internet and the growth of the social media, this is just a wrong way of doing it. It's a sledgehammer approach. And as I say, that debate is going to continue between the defenders on the one hand and the criticisers on the other. It'll be interesting. The lawyers will make some money out of it, we hope.
I think the Twitter example is a very good one, how these systems develop their own protocols and conventions, though, because when you're retweeting something, the worst thing that you can do is remove the name of the original poster. And it becomes hard if you're retweeting something that you've seen on the second or third retweet, where it's all just people's names rather than the content of the message. But the idea of anyone who's seriously using Twitter retweeting something and taking the original poster's name off is, you get really chastised for it.
There have been a big row on Twitter. There was a comedian, I can't remember his name now, but he puts up online jokes, and he's quite happy if you retweet with his name on it, because by the time you retweet the sixth time, somebody else's name on it. And then you see him, he moans all the time about people stealing his jokes. You can see that happen.
It goes that's what I mean, it's amazing from sharing to then stealing, and then
Isn't that why Twitter kind of they changed and retweaked things so it was kind of set in stone as opposed to you having to sort of voluntarily put RT in the person's name.
People, a lot of them use it because then you're forced to, you can't add a comment to it.
Oh, cheers, basically you can do it.
Do the copy and paste, use the change name.
Potentially anyone who thinks they have copyright in a creative work can take advantage of this law. I mean, people think, for the most part, it will be the big media companies, you know, those who produce music and films and so on and so forth. But it's broad enough in the way it's drafted so that anybody, as I say, if I put something up on the internet, it's mine, and I can actually take advantage of this law if I chose to do so. If I thought somebody had been downloading that without my permission. Of course, some would argue don't put it on the internet in the first place. But that's going to be a wrong solution. It makes people less willing to share stuff electronically.
Just a couple of comments, John, really, rather than a question. A conversation sprung up the other day on Twitter. Keith was talking about how the DVLA have been flogging off everyone's personal data to car parking companies.
Yep.
So the laws that enabled them to do that became exploited through the commercial interests of these bandits, really. And I'm wondering if that could take place in this, but also that it could be exploited maliciously to drive organisations offline. For example, some people might not agree with Greenpeace or BP,
Absolutely.
and I think there might be an exploit there. The other comment I thought that created a thought for me was the idea that people were exploiting Wi-Fi connections. That does happen, but they have become more secure, and it's not likely that you'll find your Wi-Fi connections exploited by someone wanting to download what's essentially a 12 gig movie, because it would just be too slow for them. Maybe an MP3 or an album, but not something like a piece of software or a very large movie. Where this is out of date already, I think, is they've not looked at the fact that someone will now put peer-to-peer behind SSL, secure socket layer, and everyone will just simply, at the moment it's done by people using Usenet, how you can apparently
So they tell me.
yeah, so they tell me. How you can download stuff via an SSL and Usenet service, and it's a secure tunnel between you and the endpoint, and no sniffing application on your ISP's infrastructure will know what you've got going through that tunnel. And it's just a matter of time before the Napster of 2010 springs up with SSL that will bypass all of this. That said, in the immediate future, I think it's going to be the Mr. and Mrs. Joneses who haven't got a clue what Little Johnny's doing,
Absolutely.
who are going to be the victims of this. The real big file sharers, those downloading terabytes of stuff, they're not going to be caught. It's the small ones. So I think it's lost before it even gets off the ground.
I agree with you. I mean, that point has been made by a number of people. It'll just catch the wrong people. Simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought the biggest issue is going to be that actually with the peer-to-peer file sharing of things like movies, most people do it, know they're doing wrong. The bigger issue to me seems to be all those areas that people do it where you don't know you're doing wrong. So, you know, there'll be a lot of publicity around this, really has been, and therefore people are sort of a bit more nervous about doing peer-to-peer file sharing or connecting